And now the Pharaoh of Egypt recognizes that Joseph has the ability to answer. So I want you to write these three things down by way of a quick introduction. Then I'll give you the fourth one, and that will be the sermon. Number one, Joseph is asked to interpret the dream. Look at verse number 16 of chapter 41. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Number one this morning, just on a quick thought, this is just introduction. Joseph's answer was an answer that I cannot do this, but God can. I don't have an answer, but God does. Simply introductory, not even going to dwell on this thought. It's so simple. Every answer you and I ought to give ought to be the answer of, I don't, but God does. I can't, but God can. If you can't answer a question with a Bible principle or precept, it really doesn't matter what your thought or opinion is. The answer ought to be, you don't need to know what I think, but you really ought to know what God thinks about this. Our answer ought to be, thus saith the Lord. Well, Brother Brent, what do you think about the culture? Doesn't matter what I think about the culture. I'm part of the culture. It doesn't matter what I think about the climate around us and the winds that are blowing. What I need to concentrate on is, what does God say about all this? And by the way, what God says is always the right thing. The answer was, God will do this thing, not me. Shows a great humility. Some of us are so puffed up. The Bible says knowledge puffeth up. Some of you think you have all the answers. I'm going to submit to you, sir, you don't even know the questions yet. Young man going into full-time ministry, I had all the answers. First day on the job, I didn't even realize I couldn't understand the question. Number two, you like that, don't you? Boy, that's quick. Josh just spoke in an unknown tongue over there. Joseph's advice. He said this dream is 7 good years. We're going to be blessed with 7 fruitful and bountiful years. But then we're going to have 7 horrible and harsh years. It's going to be so bad, there'll be no food anywhere. What I would do, sir, is I would plan ahead. And I would prepare, and I would gather, and I would store, and I would get ready in the 7 good for the 7 bad. Number two, Joseph's advice. You and I do not know what tomorrow holds. You say, things are going on pretty good right now. Now is the time to prepare and plan ahead. Now's the time to dig in and draw closer and learn and grow and do, because there'll come a time when you need to run on some reserves. When you get to the place where you're discouraged and you're in depression and maybe even that great doubt is creeping in, and you say, wait a minute, it's not what I feel in this moment about my God, but it's what I know to be true about him. Plan ahead. Life does not get easier. I used to think that. I was confident that somehow if I hit 40 years old, I would figure things out. I just, for some reason, I thought once I get a few years and get some things behind me, I'll get it figured out. I would love to be 20 again, starting over. 20-year-old problems and 56-year-old problems are very different. I'm thankful that at 22 years of age, I gave my life to Christ. And over these last difficult years, these lean years, these hard years, I'm able to look back and say, hey, I've never had him fail me one time, even in the worst days and the hardest days of my life. I thought the hard days were back there. I did not know there would be days to come. Nobody told me there'd be days like these. When you come to the end of all your hopes and dreams and all your great expectations have become disappointments, there's one who's never failed you. You prepare for the future. Number 3, we're cruising. Joseph's appointment. Read verse 37 with me. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is? A man in whom the Spirit of God is. They recognize God's working, God's presence in Joseph's life. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God has showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house. And according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, put upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. Made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, underline this please, bow the knee. Go back to a teenage boy who had a dream that everything around him would bow the knee. All right, I'm going to be the one. I'm the anointed. I'm the golden child. They'll bow before me. Pit, slavery, Potiphar, prison. Been a long road, Mr. Joseph. But now you're appointed the man. And I'm going to use this to get what I wanted. And boy, are they going to get what they deserve. Bow the knee, and they made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh. Without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph name Zaphnath-Paneah. He gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, and Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Number 3, Joseph's appointment. Now let me ask you a question. What are you going to do when you get what you want? What are you going to do when you arrive where you've always wanted to get? When it finally happens. Number 4, Joseph's arrival. Appointment, now we're here. Number 4, last point. Isn't that amazing? He's here. We did a play back in college on the life of Joseph. My best friend named Troy Holliday, 6'4", 5", big black guy. He was Joseph. We had him decked out, man. I mean, it looked like Pharaoh. It was awesome. Just, big guy. Remember the scene? Now, you know what? I'm sorry. He was not Joseph. He was the guy that made this statement. He was like the master at arms, sergeant at arms. And we arrayed Joseph. Maybe Matt Dowdy was Joseph. I don't remember. But Joseph comes out. And I remember Troy yelling, just big booming voice, bow the knee. Just echoed through the building. Bow the knee. And I remember the guys that were playing the brothers. They all bowed the knee. And I remember how silly thinking, this is such a college production of a biblical moment. And yet it was so powerful to see these brothers having to bow the knee before their brother, whom they had sold into slavery. Now, I lied. That was not the sermon. This is the sermon. It was 4 points, but this is the sermon. Chapter 42. chapter 42. The famine comes. 7 years, Joseph stores. Builds grain city, stores. Famine comes, chapter 42. The brothers come. They have to come to Egypt. They have no idea. Remember now, by now, Joseph looks like an Egyptian, dresses like an Egyptian, talks like an Egyptian, walks like an Egyptian. All right, just so we're on the same page. They don't even recognize. They think he's dead in slavery somewhere. They have no. How could our brother that we sold into slavery be on the throne of Egypt? They come in, chapter 42. Not going to read it. Chapter 42. The first interaction. Is my father alive? Is my brother alive? What's going on at home? It's been years. He has no idea. Chapter 43. They eat all the corn and they have to go back. But remember, and again, they kept a brother. You can't come back without Benjamin. Here's your money back. There's a lot going on. I'm not preaching all that this morning. There's a lot here. Dad, if we don't take Benjamin back, we're not going to get any food. He thought we were spies, all of this. Chapter 44. Chapter 45. Benjamin revealed. We come to chapter 45. Joseph is now so stirred up. He leaves the room. He cries. He comes back. He lets them know, I'm your brother. They're petrified. They think he's going to kill us right now. He brought Benjamin back to kill us all at one shot. Instead, he falls on them. He loves them. They have an incredible reunion. He says, listen, we're just in the first little bit of this thing. Go get daddy. Bring daddy down. We'll take care of him. Send him home. Hurry back. 45, 46, 47. Isaac comes. Goshen. Awesome. Great. Wonderful. 47, 48. Blessing on the kids. Blessing on the boys. 49. Joseph's a dying. He gives his final blessings. Joseph is that great bough that climbs over the wall. Awesome. Chapter 50. We covered a lot of Bible just now, didn't we? Isaac dies. And because the brethren would have done this to Joseph, they assume that Joseph is going to do this to them. All he waited for all these years was for daddy to die. Now daddy's dead. Now, he's going to enact his revenge. So this is where we come for our little Bible study of just a couple of verses here. Verse 15. Joseph's brothers saw their father was dead. They said to Joseph, peradventure hate us, certainly requite us of the evil which we did unto him. They sent a messenger to Joseph saying, thy father did command before he died, saying, I don't think Joseph's daddy said this, but that's okay. So shall we say unto Joseph, forgive, I pray thee now thy trespass of thy brethren and their sin, for they did unto thee evil, and now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spoke unto him, and his brother also went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we be thy servants. So I think they lied. We'll get to heaven and find that out. I don't think Dad ever said, don't kill them. I think that was just them in preservation mode. That's my personal opinion. I have no Bible for that. But they're desperately afraid that Joseph's about to kill them. So number one, he can. Number two, most of us would. At least sell them into slavery. At least make their life hard. Verse 19, circle it, underline it, mark it, make a big deal about it. Because we're talking about what? What's our theme? Stewards. Joseph said unto them, fear not, for am I in the place of God? Fear not, for am I in the place of God? Number one, write this down. When you get where you want to go, when you get that final place where you've gone through the suffering and the problems and the difficulties, but now you've got a little victory. Number one, Joseph saw God's place. A steward has responsibilities. An owner has rights. Joseph's role was he understood, I'm not God. Once you get a little something and arrive somewhere, don't ever forget, you're still a steward. Number two, Joseph's role, he's not God. It was not his responsibility to deal with his brothers. If God chose to punish them, he would find an instrument rather than Joseph. Some of you think, if I ever get somewhere, I will fix all this. That has never been my job nor your job. It will never be. We are poor fixers, but master mess makers. Vengeance is mine, I will repay. Listen, your job is to keep doing what you were doing to get where you got, not all of a sudden to become something you were never designed to be. I'm not God. People say to me, and they mean well, and I do appreciate their sentiment. Oh, pastor, I don't know how you could be a pastor when bad things happen and bad things happen and bad. Don't you just get bitter? I figured something out a few years ago. It's not my role and not my responsibility. It's not my. Is that my? This isn't mine. You're not mine. I'm the under shepherd of a greater shepherd. You know, don't you want to fix them? I can't fix you, but I know someone who can. So don't you want to see them get what they deserve? Not really, because I don't want to see me get what I deserve. Oh, you've arrived. No, I'm still the steward. A little more responsibility maybe, but I know what my responsibility is and isn't. Number one, he said, am I God? Boys, you're asking the wrong fella. If you want to ask forgiveness for your sin, he's the one you got to take it up with. Number two, Joseph saw God in his place. But number two, look at verse 20. As for you, you thought, ye, by the way, for those of you that struggle with King James, ye, you, class over. Ye thought evil against me. Actually, that's the plural. Ye is in the group. Ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good to bring to pass as it is today to save much people out. Number two, he saw God's presence in all of it. What's Romans 8:28 say? Somebody tell me. You might know the verse, Romans 8:28. Lee Robertson, life verse. All things, not some things, all things work together for good. For those who love God, for those who are the called according to his purpose. Did Joseph have Romans 8:28 to fall back on? No, not written yet, hundreds and hundreds of years. He did not have the precept, but he clearly had the promise and understanding that what others meant for evil, God meant for good. Every Christian should see that overall in your life is the good hand of God. And no matter what evil man may bring against us, God can and will use it for our good. Ultimately, our lives are not in the hands of men, but in the hands of God. God overrules the evil man intended for the good he imposes in our life. We see things wrong. An old preacher used to carry a bookmarker. On one side was threads all woven together. It's kind of like the back of something. All you see is the threads of it. It's all out of shape and all woolly-bully. And when people would be discouraged and disquieted about difficulties in their life, he would pull out that bookmark and he'd say, what do you see here? And they say, I just see a bunch of threads. I just see a bunch of stuff. It's all over the place. And he said, yeah, but what do you see? And he would turn it around. And on the other side, it says, God loves you just as beautifully as... See, the one side is all the backside. Doesn't make any sense. But on the other side is the beautiful, clear message that God is not going to allow anything in your life that does not do one of two things. Number one, bring glory to him, and ultimately good for you. You look at the backside and you say it doesn't make sense. You look at the God side and you say, you know what? It makes perfect sense. He saw God's presence. We were asked sometimes to give our testimony, and in our testimony, there are some difficult things we must share. But then we're quick to point out, but it was in that difficulty that God did this. And it was in that difficulty that God taught us that. And yes, in the difficulty, we didn't run around saying, whoa, this is great. But after the fact, we saw the good hand of God moving and manipulating even in the presence of evil. Joseph saw God's place. Joseph saw God's presence. Joseph saw God's plan. He said, do you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to be able to save many people alive, including you. How many people came into Egypt? Anybody know the number? 70. How many people left Egypt? 2.5 to 3 million. Not only did he save them from being killed in the famine, but he put them in the most fertile land Egypt had to offer, and they not only grew as a family from 70 to 2.5 million, but they grew financially as well, because God said, hey, I'm not just going to save you, I'm going to bless you as well. What Brother Jim said a few moments ago, he brought us in, thank God, to bring us through. If Joseph's brothers would never sold him to the Midianites, he'd never gone to Egypt. If he never into Egypt, he'd never been sold to Potiphar. If he never was sold to Potiphar, Potiphar's wife would never have tried to seduce him. If he never was accused of rape, he never would have been thrown in prison. If he never would have thrown in prison, he never would have met the baker. If he never would have met the baker, he would never interpret the dream. If he never interpreted the dream, he would have never been brought before Pharaoh. We look at that story. Let me see if I can demonstrate this. Okay, I'll just do this. Okay, let's pretend. I can't do it the way I want to do it. But let's pretend. Okay, that's better. That's better. Nicole and Caleb sit up in the box up there. They see everything. They see everything. In fact, they will send me pictures. This is a true story. Nick, all the time. Some of you will be doing dumb stuff in church, and they will send me pictures of you doing dumb stuff. Just remember that. I'm not kidding. They see everything. So if you're back there playing hanky-panky, I got pictures of it on my phone. They see all of it from this giant bird's eye version. And you see it from right here. You see it from right here. To you, you think, I'm the only one in church. They see hundreds. I'm the only one not singing. They see hundreds. I'm the only one saying whatever it is. Do you look, knowing the whole story of Joseph's life, do you and I look at it and say, that makes perfect sense? We look at it from this big 1,000 feet view and say, yeah, Joseph, of course you had to be sold into prison, into slavery. And I mean, we know the big story. Joseph Why do you have such a cruddy attitude? Look where we know you're going to end up. And if you don't get to Potiphar's, you can't get to the palace. Why? Why do we feel that way? Because we know the story. We know. So let me ask you a question. Why do you have such a bad attitude right now? I'll tell you why. Because you don't know the story. A year from now, 2 years from now, you'll look back and say, oh, now let me tell you the plan. You better get what God's giving you while he's giving it to you. Because you're going to need it later. The pit was part of the process. Potiphar's was part of the process. Wicked Potiphar wife, part of the process. Prison, part of the process. Butler, baker, part of the process. 2 years forgotten, part of the process. By the way, all the way back, the first part of the dream that God stirred up his heart as a boy at home, part of the process. Now listen to me. If you miss any part of the process, you miss a piece that God will use in the final part of the plan. Every part of Joseph's life was critical to the outcome. Every part of your life is critical to the outcome, even the parts that we would consider the evil. Because God uses even the evil for the good. I want to ask you this question. I'm going to give you one more point and we're done. If Joseph hadn't had the dream, if Joseph wasn't betrayed, sold, if one part of that process would have destroyed the plan. So I want to ask you something right now, right where you're at. What's your if? Because see, here's what I know about many of you. I don't like where I'm at right now. I don't like what's going on right now. Man, this. What's your if? What are you not allowed? What are you not allowing God to teach you right now? Now, the easy one's patience, right? Because we see that through the story of Joseph. Patience. We want it right now. All right, you know what, Joseph? 2 more years. We got to let you simmer a little more. We're going to get to heaven. I think, heard a preacher preach on this one time. I didn't like it when he preached it. In fact, I pretty much disagree with it. But now, I don't think Joseph was all that. I think Joseph might have been the guy that walked around saying, look at my coat of many colors. I'm going to be the guy. Now, can't prove that, don't know. Speculation, pure speculation. No Bible for that. After Potiphar's prison, dude, just happy to be here. Just happy to be here. Speculation, I don't know. Maybe that extra 2 years was that extra 2 years he needed in waiting, preparing. Verse 21, last verse. Now therefore fear not. Fear ye not, excuse me. I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. You think I'm going to kill you? You think I'm going to bring retribution to you? Oh, no. God put me here for the purpose of taking care of you. I'm not going to use my power to hurt you. I'm going to care for you. He calmed their fears. Fear not. Settle down. Don't worry. In the Hebrew, that translates out, don't worry. Be happy. Calm down. Fear not. He cared for them. I'm going to feed you and your little ones. I'm going to take care of you and your family. He spoke kindly to them, comforted their hearts, calmed their fears, cared for their needs, comforted their hearts. Do you know why a man with all the power doesn't have to use it? All the power doesn't have to use it. I've often said if you have to tell people you're the boss, you're not the boss. He had all the power, but he didn't have to use it. Why? Because it was not about him. It was about him. Joseph is the ultimate steward because Joseph learned from these great lessons of his life. Even when he got ultimate authority and power, he was still only a steward. And stewards have rights. Stewards have responsibilities, not rights. Stewardship is about submission to the greater authority. The reason we're teaching stewardship these few weeks, I'm preaching on it, we're having a life group. We sat down and we said, what do we want to see God do in our church? And it became a question not of what do we need, but what do we want to see God do? And here's what it boiled down to. We want to see God work in people's lives where people realize it's all about him. It's not about what we need or what we want or what we do. But we want to get you to the place where we just become stewards, where it's all about what the master wants. A mark of maturity is when it's no longer about you, but about him and about others. Immaturity says, I come to get for me. Maturity says, I come to serve for him and others. Trusting God, allowing God to bring you through, to become the person he can put in place, not to hurt or wield authority over, but to invest and influence others. Invest in and influence others for his sake. This is a life of stewardship. So many of you, my goodness, so immature. It's all about consuming, nothing about investing. We give very little of ourselves to him or others. It's all about me. We're giant black holes taking in the galaxies around us. Joseph, you got it all. What are you going to do? Serve. Joseph, you had nothing. What were you doing? Serving. But Joseph, you've got it all. Yeah, it's still about serving. It's still about just meeting needs because he's the owner. I'm the steward. How different our church would be, how different our community would be if we woke up every morning and said, Lord, you're the boss, you're the owner, I'm the steward. You have rights, I just have responsibilities. Let me serve you by serving others. Looking above the situation and get that big picture. Oh, you know what? God's probably going to use this in some great way. I just have to trust him. I don't see it all now, but I can still trust him. a life of stewardship, a life of service. Father, I pray this morning, only you can do a work, so we ask you to do it in Jesus' name. I want to ask you as you stand to your feet, heads are bowed, eyes are closed. I'm going to ask Monroe to come to the piano and play for us. If God is speaking right now to you about the matter of your if, that's the place you are right now. I want you to step out of your place and come. You're in a place that may seem like a pit or a slave house or even prison, a place of waiting, a place of patience. I want you to step out of your place and come. Right now, as Monroe plays, God's speaking about your if. If I'm not in the pit, if I'm not at the Potiphar's, if I'm not in the prison, your place you are right now, your circumstances, your situation, step out of your place and come. God's speaking, you step out, you come. If God's speaking to you about your stewardship, using what God has given you for his honor, for his glory, to help, to bless others, you step out, you come right now, right now. If you live a life of selfishness and not service, you step out, you come. If you're not a Christian, you step out, you come. You step out, you come. If you need to make decisions, join the church, be baptized, you step out, you come. Monroe sings, you step out, you come.
Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting, yielded and still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now, as in thy presence humbly I bow. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Wounded and weary, help me, I pray. Power, all power, surely is thine. Touch me and heal me, Savior divine.
And you step out, you come. Our last verse, unless you come, folks are still praying. Monroe singing this a moment. You have questions, you need to make decisions. Stewardship is a life of surrender to a greater authority. Joseph had great power. Well does he see it? The Pharaoh would not have cared one bit if he killed every one of those 11 brothers. Wouldn't have bothered him a moment. He would have allowed that without even the blink of an eye. And yet, Joseph realized he didn't serve Pharaoh. He served God. And God was in this, even the betrayal and hatred of his brothers. Surrender, 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 surrender. Last verse, Monroe